Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Sounds Terrifying. Today, Jess and I have an awesome guest in Stephen Patrick. Thank you for coming to the show.
So happy to be
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
exciting.
this is one of those awesome moments where we sort of interacted on social media on a post where you were at the Union Tavern, which we had an
Yes.
episode on, and reached out, and we found a fan, Jess. He like
Found
instantly started
a
watching and
listener.
following us.
Yeah.
That's
Super
awesome.
exciting.
I
So,
mean, anything spooky is good with me.
yeah,
Same.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that too, for becoming a fan and watching us,
Of
and
course.
now you're on the show. So fans out there of
Yeah.
TST, your dreams can come true, or nightmares, by sharing your nightmares here on That Sounds Terrifying. But
And
so why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, Stephen, and maybe why we're connecting with you today.
Um, so I guess I'll just talk about kind of what happened of like how we kind of connected. So I went to the paranormal investigation that the Union Tavern Inn was hosting, and the reason I went there is because I'm actually on the board for the Rochester Spiritual Society, which is a kind of like spiritual community of people here in Rochester that are interested in spiritualism, in which is like kind of mediumship and all sorts of things. There's a whole bunch of stuff to it. Um, but I am also a medium, and so a bunch of my friends who are also spiritualist mediums were going to this ghost hunting event, and so I went. I took some pictures and I shared it. And I guess you guys somehow found it because I shared it. I think the Union shared it, and then
Mhm.
you saw that they shared it, and then we connected over spooky ghost things, which is fantastic.
The power of social media. That's awesome. Awesome. So, yeah, so I know I wanted to have you in here. And one of the other things that was super cool is like Jess is also a medium and was interested in learning more about like, you and your background in that regard. But you also said like during our correspondence, you had some interesting experiences yourself and maybe some stories to share.
Yeah,
So that would be really
some.
awesome. But Jess, do
that
you
I
have any
do.
like, do you have any immediate questions, Jess, to
Oh,
put
I
you on
do.
the
I have
spot?
so many. Well, I think that not everybody knows that they're a medium, right? Like not everybody knows
Right.
that, but like I feel like the people that kind of develop into it, not all, because there's definitely some people that develop it later in life and had no idea. But a lot of us have had experiences since we were children. So
Right.
I guess my first question is like, how did you know that you had this gift to develop? Because I mean, I guess everybody has this, right? But some people just have it more than others.
Right.
And just how did you know?
Um, well, besides the fact that I like had just a lot of very vivid like experience as a kid, I feel like it's somewhat common. I mean, not for every kid, but like for when someone is have like kind of an inclination to like being like psychic or medium, when you
Mhm.
do have it as a kid, it tends to be very, very strong,
Mhm.
like a lot stronger than usually adults are. And
Yeah.
so I kind of had that going on, but I think what helped me out was that I came from a family that was very, very open to all of that stuff. My I always kind of say that my family was very like spiritualist adjacent because like even though my family was raised, we were all like kind of like cultural Italian Catholics, there was like a lot of belief in other stuff. So
Mhm.
like ghosts, people going to psychics, mediums, astrology, like they were very, very open to that. And so when I was a little kid and I was saying like, oh, like I saw like my great grandma or something like that, or if I was having dreams or something, instead of being like, oh, kind of dismissing it or something like that, my parents were just like, oh, well, what did she say? Like it was treated as
Nice.
so matter of fact
Hmm.
that for like a lot of my childhood it was just very normal almost like and so I think I just got pretty comfortable with it for a while. I will say one of my like experiences though that did kind of change things was when I was probably like maybe 10-ish. I saw something that was just so vivid that it actually kind of freaked me out a bit, and then it kind of like went away for a while.
Yeah.
My ability to like, because when I would see things, I would see them like
Hmm.
not like an internal thing, like an outward thing,
Yep.
Right.
where it was very, very almost tangible. And then I saw something that just very unsettled me. And what then kind of happened was up until I was about 16, I would have dreams of people in spirit, but I wouldn't actually see them when I was like awake. And then when I was around 16 is when I started to kind of a lot of different things happened, but I kind of had like sort of like a little mini spiritual kind of awakening where I was like, maybe I should actually work on this and develop it, and this is something I'm supposed to be doing. And
Yeah.
so then everything kind of opened up more and I kind of got into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. I wonder if because you were so scared as a child, um I don't know if you protected yourself or if your guides protected you and they're like, "You know what? Like we got
Yeah,
to hold off."
that's exactly what I'm almost 100% certain that was what it was. A little, I think it was a little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think it was just like, okay, this is clearly way too much. We need to
Yeah.
roll it back a little bit.
Hmm.
Because it
Yeah.
didn't, because I know for some people it will go away. It never really went away. It just kind of tapered down a bit.
Yeah.
Which is nice. That was
Yeah.
a nice, thing of them
Yeah.
to do where it's
Yeah.
just, we're just gonna like a little bit. You can see them
Turn
in
it down, turn
dreams.
the volume down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, because, we're old souls, but in a child's body, you don't know or remember that. So typically,
And we talk a
Right.
lot about on the show about children also often being much more open
yeah,
Hmm.
and, being like to the entire environment. So that's probably part of it too.
yeah,
I don't like we've talked also on the show about how again I don't see things, but I feel things.
Hmm.
And now that you've said what you've said, I just never reflected on this that way. But I used to be really emotional as a child,
Hmm.
especially like I had someone very dear to me pass away, and I don't really remember this, but my parents said like for like an obsessively long amount of time, like months, I would be crying myself to sleep and being connected with whatever, being so open to that. And part of that is definitely grief. But
Right.
to the point where my parents were like, we might have to have him talk to somebody.
yeah.
This is getting a little crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it kind of goes back to that instance where you were talking about, you were really open to things and other children are very open to things. But it's good that it tapered down a little bit, and part
Yeah.
of it might be you're also getting some control of it, right? Or
Yeah,
understand.
it was definitely, I think it was kind of like what Jess said, where it was
Yeah.
like guides or myself. I think it was like
Yeah.
a mix of both.
Yeah.
And yeah, it definitely was
Super
that, because like I said, it never actually went away.
Hmm.
And the other thing too is, again, my family was always very like that this isn't bad. And so
interesting.
I think having that, know that this is like normal, and like having like kind of a reassurance, like, okay, I think it kind of like softened it a bit to where it wasn't like just, oh, this is something. Well, because it's either, people usually either meet it if it's in your mind, it's not real,
Hmm.
or it's like this is demonic. So I didn't have either of those.
Yeah.
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 That was my side. My side was that's a demon.
Uh-huh.
Don't talk to it. And I'm like, but it's pretty and angelic and sweet and soft and love. And they're like,
Yeah.
demon, demon, demon. Don't. And I was like,
Right.
all right. So you close it down because you're
Yeah.
afraid. And then
Yeah.
anytime you see something or feel something or hear something, you're at war with yourself of
Yeah.
like, the way I feel is not that this is what you're saying, but what you're telling me and what I guess I believe in is that it is demonic and I shouldn't be playing in this.
Yeah.
As an adult, I peeled all that away, but that took a long
Yeah,
time.
that takes a lot of work. One of the other things I do with the Rochester Spiritual Society is I regularly teach mediumship development classes. Um, and so the one that I teach tends to be, we meet once a month, and I tend to teach a lot of the people who are just starting.
Yeah.
I like doing that. And so a lot of the people that are coming to those are coming from like, they've made the decision where they want to do this, and so they're either really excited or they're sort of like almost like cautiously optimistic, where they're like, I came from a family that, either everything's bad about it or just it's not real. And so it takes a lot to like be
It
able to
does.
unpack all of that, and it's a lot of work. So like kudos on embracing all of that. That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
I think it got to be too strong that I couldn't ignore it, and I was
Yeah,
just like, ah,
that 100%. I've heard these stories
yeah,
so many times where and that's usually what happens because anytime you're basically like people I know it is something special, but it's also something that is a naturally occurring part of you. And
right.
when you're deny anything that's a part of
Yeah.
you, it's gonna eventually bubble up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, I find it interesting. And I do like to remind people all the time, like anybody can do this. Everybody can have dreams. Everybody, like it's just a matter of how open you are. And,
Yeah.
some people are born soccer players. They're just so naturally athletic. And I am not one of those naturally athletic people, but I can still play soccer.
Yeah.
I can dabble, but
Right.
like, but that's how I feel about spiritualism, mediumship, and things like that. Like I just was more predisposed to it, and I'm still not like that super strong in it, at all. But I can do it and do it, and connect probably a little bit better than somebody who wouldn't be as open.
Yeah.
Well, like you
Uh,
said, it's practice too.
yeah,
Like that some of those soccer players weren't born natural. They were just really, really good and they practiced a lot.
they practice a lot. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anybody can do it. And
Yep.
and I feel like people just need to understand that because when people are like, "Oh, you're gifted or you're cursed or you're this or that," and I'm like, "I'm the same as you. Like you have that. We're all born with it."
Yeah.
I don't know how many new souls are coming out, I feel like. You know. But
This
yeah,
just
I
in.
just
New soul.
new soul. There's a new soul.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that works, but I just like to make sure that everybody that I meet knows that like I'm not special. I'm just
You are
practicing it.
special,
And like
Jess.
I am special in other ways. And I'm not special in
It's a-
that way.
That's
Like
a different podcast.
yeah, I just have that like extra piece of it where like it made it so that I could do it a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
I still need to practice and do stuff, and I just have not explored that yet because I don't have the time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but I do
So,
love
Yeah.
all things spooky, and I love that because we, maybe because we dabble in this and have our whole lives, we loved paranormal, and I
mhm.
Yeah.
think I've said it on the show before. I think I was drawn to it so that I didn't feel crazy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
even the seeing ghosts aside, I was just a weird, spooky little kid. Like, and so,
Yeah.
like, I feel like those were almost like two completely different things, and occasionally they cross paths.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like little kid in the '90s obsessed with like Halloween, Goosebumps, all
Yes.
that.
that stuff.
Goosebumps. Yeah. Are You Afraid of the Dark? My number
Oh
one
yeah,
show.
of course,
Still my
yeah.
comfort show. Scooby Doo when I was too little to
Same.
like
Oh yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a weird little kid, Adam's Family. Wednesday's my girlfriend,
Yeah.
whatever. Well,
Whatever. Wednesday.
whatever,
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So, or, maybe I just want to be Wednesday. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But public service announcement, unofficial public service announcement to all the parents out there, let the kids talk about it. And like take it in and listen to them because I think
Yeah.
with anything, not just this,
Yeah.
I think giving them a forum to like speak and feel comfortable speaking with you, you may figure out that it's something completely else or different, but at least you're listening and keeping that open dialogue because I think that is something that we've all as kids gone through where a parent shut us down about something we really believe is happening or whatever. So
Mm,
that's a parent in me talking. Sorry. Um,
I agree.
but yeah, I mean, so Stephen, maybe
Yeah.
we can transition to like a little bit more about like so you realize this at an early age that you had some abilities. Can you maybe talk about a couple experiences that you have
Yeah.
had and you know get to the
Um.
more creepier
Yeah.
side of things?
um. So I will say when I was pretty little, like a lot of the experiences, it's funny because except like the one, I don't really remember them being like they were just so matter of fact. Like I would just be seeing spirits and it was just in different places. Like it wasn't just like my house or anything. And I think another thing too that may have also helped why I kind of wasn't freaked out is a lot of the time it was actually during the day. Like I feel like a lot of people hear stories and they think, oh, like ghost stories all at night. These
Night.
were all
Yeah.
been like
Yeah.
broad daylight in the day, which kind of made it less scary. Um, the one thing though that I was, because I was kind of thinking about like what stories to talk about is a lot of the experience that I've had uh are actually also shared experiences with my entire family. My family's house, my family lives in East Irondequoit going towards Seabreeze, not quite in like the center of like Seabreeze where like the Union is and stuff, but sort of like right at the beginning. They live right off of Culver, and they live in one of the oldest houses on the street they live on. It was built, I think, in 1912, maybe 1917. I'm not quite sure. They have the original deed, and there's some
Hmm.
little confusion about it. But there's only ever been two families that lived in that house: the family that built it, and then my family.
Yeah.
My great grandpa bought it for my grandparents um, in like the night, like around 1960 something. And ever since, my family's just kind of, my grandparents lived there, my dad grew up there, my parents now live there, and I even kind of half of my time was there because it was my grandparents' house, who I was very very close with, and so there are definitely some spirits in the house because it's so old, and all of us have had different experiences just over the decades of there being some spirits in that house. And I even remember being a little kid, um, and I never saw, when I was little, I never actually saw anything in the house, but I distinctively always remember the feeling that there was someone nearby or watching me. And I never really talked about this with my family when I was little, but they kind of like, when I was a little bit older, they kind of also acknowledged that they had that feeling too, and had even shared some other experiences. Like my sister actually saw something when she was a little kid and just never said anything to anyone.
Hmm.
She said that she was in they have like my grandparents' house has sort of like a not quite finished basement, like half finished basement, and there, so like part of it was like kind of like a playroom area from when we were younger. And she was just saying that she like saw like kind of a man walk past one of the doorways, and just kind of never really said anything. um,
Yeah.
just because in that area of the basement, it's not as if someone could have like come down like a flight of stairs. It's like a room where there is no exit or anything, and so she just kind of dismissed it. Um, and I felt things. My dad even told me some stories of his dog, when he was a little kid, would always just sit in the living room and just watch the stairs
Hmm.
and just constantly be watching the stairs. And so after my when my grandparents moved out because when they got pretty old, they just couldn't take care of the house anymore. It was too much house for them. My parents moved in, and their dogs would sit and just stare at the stairs, and they
Hmm.
would just be
Interesting.
watching the stairs. And it's not like these are stairs where, like, because I know in some staircases you can kind of like see the other room or something. It's like an older house, so like there's a hallway with the stairs in it. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing there but a flight of stairs, and so they'd just be sitting there just watching it. And it was never anything like barking or anything. They'd just be looking at it constantly instead of like looking out the window or something like that. Um, and eventually, I think probably the most intense story that I know that I had experience with this house was when I actually I moved around a lot when I was younger. I actually spent most of my adult life in Southern California. I moved back here probably in like 20 maybe like 2012. And I moved in with my grandparents because I was helping them out because they were getting really old and they just needed some extra help. And I was there, and it was pretty late at night one night, and I was just upstairs, and I heard so this, again, the house was built in 1912. So if you even put a tiny amount of weight on the stairs, it will make like the loudest creak you could possibly imagine, every single
Yeah.
one of them. So you can very clearly hear when someone is walking up the stairs. So I heard incredibly distinct footsteps just walking up the stairs. And the thing that puzzled me was that my sister, who was also living there with me at the time, was at work. And I thought that she came home and just walked up the stairs. And maybe like I just didn't hear her go down or something. And my grandparents at the time were so old and not doing well that they would like it. This was like a very clearly someone walking up the stairs. My grandma practically had to like crawl up the stairs, like because she was so like she could like it would be like one step, 5 minutes, next step, 5 minutes. But this was clearly someone walking up the stairs. So I went down and I'm like, okay, she must have just gotten off of work. Maybe I'll just make some tea or something for both of us when I start making tea. And I'm just sitting there waiting for her to like come down and she's not coming down. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe she went to bed. And so I start putting everything away and I see her car pull up that she wasn't even home. And so that was just kind of the most like experience where I've just had where normally a lot of my experiences are very visual, or if they are audible, it's sort of like an inner audible thing. That was
Mhm.
probably one of the first experiences I've had where it was like a physical phenomenon that was just completely like I heard it, other like it was a sound outside of my head. Um, that was pretty crazy. Um, the thing that is interesting though, so this was around the time that my grandparents were still alive and they were also living in this house. They've since passed. And my parents moved in. When my parents moved in, they made a lot of changes to the house. Like they were nothing huge, but they ripped up some carpet and put in some new floors, and they were changing things around. And when they started changing things around, everything kind of amped up, like the energy in the house. Um, my mom would see like a figure walk by a lot, like the doorways when my dad wasn't home, and it was just her. And she could always say that it was this man, who was kind of thin and taller than she was, and she'd see him walking around. There's never ever been any kind of malicious feeling. It's just always just sort of like this presence of sort of like just someone's there watching. In her case though, she actually saw a physical like form, and she said that it wasn't like a shadow, it was like a person, like she saw like a person walk by. She also heard footprints, she also heard footsteps at night,
Mhm.
when my dad was like very clearly sleeping, like in the so their bedroom is like off of the living room and there are no other doors to it. It's just the one door next to like the couch where she was sitting, and she was sitting and reading there. He was in the bedroom, and she could hear um the uh the footsteps in like the kitchen of someone walking. Um some other start things started happening. My mom had a little mantle clock on like a little table, and it would move every night. Like it would turn, like the clock itself would be turned slightly. And she actually wanted to see because she thought it was my dad like just driving trying to annoy her. And so she put like a piece of tape on the clock and to see if like if it was moving and stuff. And so there were a couple times where he wasn't home, and it would be moved from like where the tape was.
Right.
Since then, but again, none of these were there was never any kind of malicious feeling to it. It was just sort of almost like I'm here, like,
Mhm.
and I'm letting you know I'm here. And especially when with them working on everything, it may have even been more like, hey, I know what you're doing. um the thing that was probably I think the most confirming to all of this though, which is like my grandparents were very like crazy old Italian people. And so I know they would just do things that I just like you'd be like, what why didn't you tell us this or something? Like you're like, oh whatever, I didn't think it was a big deal. And so if anyone's ever seen the show Everybody Loves Raymond, my
Yep.
grandparents were basically Frank and Marie.
Oh, that's funny.
That's awesome.
And so like this towards the end of when my grandma was living there, um, my grandpa may have even died at that point. She may have even moved out, but at one point it was like a holiday and we were sitting, and of course my family were talking about ghosts and it's like a holiday. And at one point I was just saying like, oh yeah, like I heard footsteps and some other stuff. And I think this may have been the first time I ever directly told my grandma this. And she tells us, she was like, oh, well, the owner who owned this house before we moved in died in the basement.
Jeez.
That'll do
We
it.
were just like
Yeah.
my dad who grew up in this house No one knew any of this. And we were just like, what? Excuse me? And she's like, oh yeah, he died in the basement. They're like, he was he lived by himself. His family built this house, and his niece and nephew just sold it after he passed away. And so we're like, we've all been seeing these things all these
Yeah,
years. It's like of a man and all this stuff, and not once you thought to tell us. I didn't think it was important.
that's so funny. That sounds like my family. Something is so
So,
obvious and they don't tell you.
Oh yeah. And so we've kind of determined at this point that I don't really like to say that the house is haunted because I feel that's more of like a very specific connotation of like negative things.
mhm.
And I kind of joke around and just say that like my parents are his tenants.
Mhm.
Um and he's just kind of there. And sometimes I think he's actually not. So I don't think it's necessarily one of those cases where there's a spirit like bound to the house from sorrow or anything like that. I literally think he just kind of comes and goes and checks in occasionally just to see how everything is going. Because I think he's just so used to my family being there. My
Mhm.
dad actually used to joke, well, this is going to sound kind of grim, but whatever. This is my family's humor. My dad used to joke that my grandparents were actually the ones haunting him, and then he was the one being haunted by
That's
them because they're
funny.
so crazy. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of interesting probably experiences I'm not even remembering, but a lot of mine have centered around that in terms of like more audible physical
Mhm.
experiences that we kind of associate with like kind of ghost investigations and stuff like that. In terms of mediumship and stuff, I have way more way more other
Mhm.
stuff too.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So, I mean, like, I'm glad you told us who you think it is, because I was going to ask,
Yeah.
like, have you sat there and asked, who's here? Who is
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Um,
No, I have since then, and it's definitely the old owner. I actually because my dad actually suggested this, and I recently because I told him I was going to be on this podcast, and my dad was like, "You should look at the old documents because my grandparents have the original documents," and he was like, "You
Mhm.
could probably find out who it is."
Yeah.
right.
So I'm gonna do that. Maybe I'll like tell you guys if I
Yeah.
find
Give us an
anything out.
update. Yeah.
Yeah, please do. I want to know. That's cool.
Yeah. I was going to ask
Yeah.
that if you've seen any old pictures or something of the person and been able to say, like, hell, yeah, that's the guy, you know?
So it's funny that you say that because I don't have old pictures, but it's so funny because when my grandma was moving out of the house, she was downsizing because she basically was a hoarder,
Mhm.
and not in a mentally ill kind of way. I shouldn't say that. She
Sure.
was more like the old Italian ladies whose main hobby is just shopping for things they don't need,
Yeah.
and so, and so she just had tons and tons of things that were like still in their boxes when like we were helping her move. And so there were a few like these little old things that were just always around the house that I never questioned. And I just, while she was moving, I was like, oh, what is that? She's, oh, I found that in the house when I moved in. And so there's actually several objects that are still in the house, and I have some of them that belonged to that family that moved there,
Mhm.
that
Wow.
built the house. There's like I have one of them was like a teapot and two cups. My grandma gave me that, and then my mom actually still has a washboard, like one of those old fashioned washboards, and a little wooden chair that
Mhm.
like it looked like almost like a child's wooden chair. And
Mm.
those are still at the house. And I think there might even be a couple other little trinkets and things that were just from the original family.
Mhm.
So even some of his stuff is still there.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah. It's
funny you just
interesting.
mentioned the teapot and that you had made your sister tea thinking that she was home. And all I kept
Right.
thinking was like the ghost tricked you into making tea for both of you.
Yeah.
That's funny. Maybe I should offer him some tea. That would be a good
Yeah.
idea.
You were having ghost tea, you had no idea.
Ghost
I love
tea.
that. That's so funny. I need to tell my mom that.
But yeah, I don't know. I was like, maybe he made tea for his sister quite a bit. And the ghost was like, I need some tea.
Came to
I
not
don't know
came
how
up
that works.
came upstairs to get me to make it.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, hello. That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
would just to add to that, like we had that guest on Rissa Miller, I think her name was, with that into the tea leaves, and she
Chris,
used to,
yeah,
yeah,
she's amazing.
she's
Krista.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. And
My
so,
go ahead.
no, I was just
Go.
gonna say, like, a lot there's spirituality and things within, the tea, and
my
like, go ahead.
Yeah.
my the Rochester Spiritualist Society actually just had a tea leaf reading event at the Union.
Awesome.
So that
There's
was
like
fun.
full circle here. This
Yeah.
like it's kind of funny. The tea stuck out for some reason.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
full circle spilling the tea.
Well,
Yeah. Ooh,
it,
I want to
it
go to that.
yeah. Yeah, we gotta definitely share some of that and get out there and try some of these events out. That would be cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely we
Um,
do.
but Steven, it's just funny because certain things like um I've just connected with like so when you were saying, and I wish I had said something sooner, but you're just like, oh, my grandparents, they're kind of like, everybody loves Raymond's grandparents. That was the show. It was in my head. I was thinking about that show at like when you were talking about like, oh, it's kind of like, was it Frank and I forget. Yeah, but it's like
Marie.
yeah, Frank and Marie.
You can telepathically pick up on my frustrations thinking about what I had to deal with.
No, but it was just funny because so again and some we picked up on the tea thing a little bit too, and I connected back to that. But like that was just weird because you were talking and I was thinking, oh, it's kind of like reminds me of Frank and Marie. So
It's so
yeah,
funny. Yeah, I don't know. It's neat once you get a mind meld going.
Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Vibing.
So yeah.
Sorry,
So
improv.
because we like all things spooky, and you said you've had some spooky things happen. Do you want to share like a story? Like what's like the spookiest thing that you can recall that's happened to you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Um, see, this is difficult because when I think of spooky, it to me it's fun.
Sure,
So
same. Yeah, I
so
get
like
it.
So what's the
so
funnest thing? Let's
Yeah.
be really
okay.
bad with our English, like
So
my son was today. The what's the funnest thing?
The most funnest.
The most funnest of
um
all.
I'm a spiritualist,
Mhm.
and it's also like kind of like a faith thing too. And so I keep like a little altar, and I have like little candles and like glasses of water and things like that on it. And when I first this is probably, I'm trying to think, this was maybe like, I don't how he'll hate me. It was when I first moved in with my boyfriend. I don't remember what it was. We've been together like a long time.
Mhm.
And um
There.
we moved into this apartment, and we had like a guest room, and I kind of like just put like my little altar in there. And I was talking to him about it, and he knew, like he knows, like at this point he better know that I'm a spiritualist. But and so I was just telling him, I was like, the altar sometimes is active because it's like a little magnet. And
Mhm.
so I was like, so if you ever hear something coming from the room or something like that, that's just whatever. And he's like, what are you talking about? And as I'm saying this, we hear this like noise that's like, and I like look in the room, and one of the glasses had moved across the table. And it's like a little glass of water. Like
Mhm.
it's not like it's on a slant. It's not like anything like that. It's just it like made the noise of like, like something
Yeah,
moving across
sliding.
wood,
Yeah.
and it had moved across the table, and he was just like, "Oh, like that. Okay."
On cue.
That's funny. And he
Yeah.
didn't run out of the house. Good for him.
Yeah.
That's
His family's kind of his family was interesting. His is a bit more. He had kind of half and half, where half was more of the religious, where they weren't okay with it, but the other half was like really, really fine with stuff.
Right.
So he grew up also kind of like thinking like, well, ghosts are like a thing and stuff like that. Like he told me that his mom had visited Lilydale a few times and
Mhm.
stuff. So like
Mm.
nothing, not like really, really into it, but just dabbling and stuff. So, and he even had his own experiences. So, but yeah, no, he definitely didn't go running.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, aren't you
Yeah.
lucky? Aren't you
because that is
lucky?
kind
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, because that is kind of how most of my experiences are, where it's just sort of just like, well, of course this is
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Well, Spirit was like this.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Shh.
Take that. But and
Like
I
what?
was thinking like, aren't you lucky to have a boyfriend that would allow you to keep your weird, creepy, hobby
Yeah.
in a room? Like,
Yeah.
because you think about
Well,
couples and like, get rid of that dog. That dog is disgusting and ugly. Or like, yeah, you're
definitely
not
you get
doing
rid of the
taxidermy
person, not the
anymore.
dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Free
no, I'm
free
too.
person.
Yeah.
Spiritualism and mediumship and spooky things is so much part of my life. Pretty
Yeah.
much anyone in my life has to be like okay with that. Otherwise, they pretty much wouldn't be okay with me. So,
Yeah.
which like you can be not okay with me, just not around me. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Keeping your space clean.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you've got like a spirit, an altar space. Like some people have a man cave where they drink beer and watch sports and has their memorabilia up there. You have an
Right.
altar in a guest room. I,
Oh yeah. Oh, and at this because we've moved since then. So at this
yeah.
point, like I have like an office that's basically doubles as like filled with like altars and spooky things. So yeah, I have my spooky cave.
Spooky.
That's cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring this up, and it's kind of like it kind of goes along with this. But have you guys heard of? You guys know who Annabelle is, right? The
Of
doll,
course.
Yeah.
right?
Just
Yeah,
moved,
the
right?
Raggedy Ann.
Of
Did
course I
you
had heard of
guys?
her.
So the Warrens had stated that she should never be moved from her place in Connecticut,
Hmm. They just moved
and
her.
then they've been moving her. Have you
Yeah.
heard this?
Yeah.
They
Of
moved
course. I've
her.
been following it like state by state.
Yeah.
And New Orleans had her Nolans had a freaking fire of the plantation,
Hmm.
which, depending on how you look at it, could be good or bad. But um and then they had the jailbreak
Hmm.
too. Like while she was there, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder, and now she's in San Antonio or like
What's
was last
happening
week.
in San Antonio?
And I'm like, what's going on in San Antonio? I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
Getting turned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, I mean, they told you not to move her. I don't know, but
I
I've
love
been
that, Jess.
fascinated by
I
this.
love that, Jess, because like there's such huge areas too, and
They
like
are. They're big
yeah,
cities.
yeah, big cities. Let's just let's
I
unlock
wouldn't want to be driving
Pandora's
that
box.
truck with
Oh
like
my
all the
gosh,
haunted objects. No, thank
that's like a
you.
horror film right there. Like
Right?
we gotta like
Or
reach
maybe, I
back,
mean, or it could be that the objects are keeping it safe because they
right?
want to go somewhere.
We
That could be
gotta
it.
we gotta
Yeah.
reach back out to Kendrick
That's
Fox on our previous episode and like see if he wants to produce like a movie around moving Annabelle, right? It's like a could you imagine? There's like it could be on the Home Improvement Network too. Moving with Annabelle. And you got like
moving
all,
a
in
bunch
the
all
of
I can
guys
think,
in this box in the front seat and
all I could think of is like the Griswold's Family Vacation, but with like
oh.
Annabelle.
Yeah. With the what was that, the grandma or the great
funny.
aunt
Yeah,
or
the
whatever.
ant
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
top.
the great
I pledge allegiance to the flag. Aunt Bethany.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Anyways, I digress. I just thought that was
That
funny
was a
with the
great
No,
spooky
I've been
objects.
digression.
following it too. I think it's just hilarious. I like because to me I'm totally not. I don't know, things like that don't weird me out. I just think it's fun.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, but one of the things I was kind of even thinking of was just so not only like because I mean I despite all of this I still have like my kind of healthy skepticism, and so they say like this doll has all of this energy and whatnot about her, however you want to understand what that is.
Sure.
Um, but the thing I thought was just interesting was how, because like New Orleans is like filled with like
Yeah.
energy. It's like basically a
So much.
powerhouse. And so
Yeah.
that was why it was interesting. I was like, is it maybe like these two things kind of like vibing together?
Hmm.
Like where it's kind of all these things are happening. So maybe we'll see as it goes to other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what it actually was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do. They celebrate the macabre there quite a
Hmm.
Oh
bit.
yeah.
So you're right. Like that, it could have been like attracts like sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was all like really, really interesting. Um, so the Union Tavern, you had experiences there too,
Yeah.
right? So I would love to hear what your
Yeah, let's tie
experiences
that
were.
back. Yeah, for sure.
That was actually really interesting. So one of the things, so even though like um like middle school to like college I was in Southern California, but like elementary school, later adulthood I've been here in Rochester. And
Mhm.
so I used to go to that restaurant all the time with my family, like when it was back when it was the reunion,
Yeah.
like
Right.
all the time. And so I've known that it's like been haunted and stuff since I was a little kid. I'd been there since I was a little kid. um I never really, it was always kind of like my experiences when I with the house when I was little, where I'd go to the Union and I never really felt like anything, never felt anything bad as a little kid, never had any crazy experiences. I did feel that sort of like being watched feeling though.
Mhm.
And when I was little, like that was kind of how it manifested itself, whereas I'd feel like something was there watching.
Same.
Um
Yeah.
Yeah.
when I went there recently, especially for the for the paranormal investigation, which was nice just because it's it's way quieter because it's after
Yeah.
hours, and so you can actually kind of take some time to like tune in and stuff. Um, I The one thing that really was interesting to me, because I felt a few things and I'm sort of almost reluctant to share them just because I want them to be like, I want to validate them.
Yeah.
Sure.
I want to see if I can validate them because I picked up on a few like things that could potentially be validated. So I want to
Yeah.
like hold off on those.
Sure.
But the one thing I did pick up on, which definitely was validated because the ghost hunting team, or the paranormal, I should say paranormal investigators, because they
Hmm.
are not ghost hunters,
It's
but
Monroe
but
County Paranormal. Yeah,
yeah,
we've just
the,
yeah,
and they were awesome. They were fantastic. I just want to
They
shout out to
are.
them
yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've met with people who are kind of more like it's like a hobby,
Hmm.
but they were so professional and so kind about it, and I just love their vibe about how they did it because they're so respectful to like
Mhm.
the spirits and all of that other stuff, and it was just so refreshing to see that because I am so used to seeing all of the stuff on TV where
Yeah.
it is completely insane. And I
Yeah.
will say it is kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine to watch those
Yeah.
shows, just because,
Sure.
again, because it's basically fake reality TV, which is
Right.
my guilty pleasure. Um, but when I was there, I picked up on something at first, and I wasn't sure what it was, and I thought it was I forgot how to say her name. She was the mistress of the house,
Lavinia.
Lavinia. I
Mhm.
picked up on Lavinia, and she like, and I just got this feeling of like it was sort of just like, oh, I know you,
Mhm.
like I've seen you before, and I was just like,
Yeah.
cool. And I'm thinking like, I was here as a little kid and stuff like that. And then it was almost like this correction. I got like this quick vision basically, and I started seeing Irondequoit Cemetery. And what I did not know, because the paranormal investigators were saying how they were initially buried in the um, Brad Street Cemetery, which used to be in Seabreeze. What I did not know is that cemetery was actually relocated to the Irondequoit Cemetery. Their
Hmm.
graves were moved there, and the bodies were moved there. And I go to that cemetery a lot because my parents' house is right by it, and my grandparents are buried there, and a bunch of family members, and so I'm there a lot. Like, and I leave flowers, and I like go say some prayers and stuff like that. And what I found out was I had apparently been walking past their grave for years and never knew that they were there, the Bradstreets with
Oh wow.
Lavinia.
That's
And
interesting.
so that was definitely a confirmation.
So do you think that she goes from her like grave to
Yeah, I don't. So the feeling that I got was just from a lot of the spirits there is I don't feel well, not all of them, but I think like her, I don't think they're necessarily bound to the building. I think
Hmm.
it's
yeah.
more that they come in to check in, see how things are. I think what sometimes happens with spirits is, and just even people like on this side of life, we build connections with places, and they're really like emotional, spiritual connections. Like if you go to some places that like is so much meaning to you, you feel something, and so I
Mhm.
feel, at least from my perspective, that often happens with spirits where there's
Hmm.
places that are just kind of energetically you're kind of connected to, and so I feel like um somehow she can do that. I don't pretend to know everything, but
Sure.
Yeah.
it's but it just
No.
seems to me that makes sense that
Mhm.
if we're in spirit and we're not really like bound by matter, then if someplace has like an emotional connection to you, then we can go to it. Especially because I actually realized someone's taking care of their grave
Hmm.
because the husband's Samuel was a veteran, and on Veterans Day, Memorial Day,
Hmm.
people go to those graves and
And they
put little
clean them.
flags there,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
their grave is actually being like attended to and stuff like that, so there's still like a link of
Right.
people kind of connecting with them on that level, so that may be why they can go to those places. And especially for them because they have just this kind of connection, I think, with all of Seabreeze in general,
Hmm.
which in general is insanely. hotbed of paranormal things, not just
Yeah.
the Union,
Yeah.
but everything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything there. I feel like every house there has like a ghost story to it because it's not just my parents' house. The neighbors have stories. The
Hmm.
lake has stories. The park. So
All those restaurants.
Yep.
I really love Rochester. I think the fact that I didn't grow up really truly grow up here, like I was here as a little kid and I moved back. There's so much interesting stuff here.
Yeah.
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 And in one of my other hats is that I am a historian for the Spiritualist Movement. And so there is so much interesting stuff that goes on in Rochester related to spiritualism and mediumship and ghosts and all of these things. And it's kind of like a little sleeper hit, like because people always talk about all these other cities that have ghosts, like, oh, it's like Salem and New
Hmm.
Orleans. Rochester should be up there, but people
Yeah.
just don't kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, like, also some of those buildings are connected by like those tunnel systems that
Oh
the
yeah.
group probably talked a little bit about. So it'd be interesting, Stephen, if you go back and you listen to like our Union Tavern episode, and then even like the one with the Monroe County Paranormal. You might find maybe you'll find some answers to things that you were
Yeah,
seeing
I
or
hope
feeling.
so.
Um,
Yeah.
and then kind of swing back and let us know if the other things were validated.
I would love that.
But
Yeah. Our recap one,
yeah.
after the MCPI, that one is where I share like stuff that I could not validate necessarily, but I felt, strongly about. So I'm curious if any of the stuff that I experienced you might have experienced.
I will go watch that and find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, let me know.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Or maybe I was way off. I don't know. But um but yeah, I mean like that's really cool. I love that you also clarified for people that like they're not necessarily bound to the building, or at least
Mhm.
not all of them.
I
Um
Yeah, I feel like there are some spirits maybe at the Union that are a little bit more earthbound kind of. But
Basement. Yeah.
yeah. But I don't. I have some other thoughts on that too, where I just yeah, that I had because that was actually the first time I'd ever really been in some of the other areas of the Union. I'd been upstairs before and I'd been downstairs, like the main floor. Never, that was the first time I was ever in the basement, and also the
Yeah.
first time I was ever in like the little speakeasy
Mhm.
room.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting to like kind of be able to kind of vibe with some of that stuff. And I think I have my hunches about that, which I'm gonna look into,
Yeah.
do some more
Yeah.
research into that.
Yeah.
So our episode 8 was the Union Tavern, and then episode 28, like 20 episodes later, basically, we had the reveal right after we met with.
I think I saw the one where it was the first one. I don't
Yeah,
think I saw like the recap one, so I need to go
yeah,
back and watch
that was after
Yeah.
we actually interviewed
28.
Monroe County Paranormal, and then after that we were invited out to the same thing that you had visited and had some experiences there. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, the recap will be interesting. I
Yeah,
really want to know. We gotta keep in touch.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and we definitely should connect with your spiritual society and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll put that into the show notes so that people can kind of connect with you.
awesome.
And we'll definitely share all that information in the show notes. So,
Yeah.
so Stephen, yeah,
Tell
sorry,
us
Jess.
where people can find you if they want
Yeah,
to find you.
So my website is stephenpatrickspiritualist.com, and it has like links to everything that all of my stuff on there. So like Instagram, Facebook, and I also have two blogs where I write about a lot of things. My one blog is Your Friendly Neighborhood Spiritualist, and it's just random little articles on basically anything that I randomly find interesting. The other one is Rock City Spiritualist, and it is all of my historical research I have done on the spiritualist movement here in Rochester up for free. Um,
Wow.
so there's just tons of information on there. I've had people who go on there who have reached out to me because they found out like their long lost relatives were like mediums,
hmm
or I've had some people contact me because I listed like an address of like an old spiritualist church that was in a house, and now it is someone's house. And so I've had a lot of interesting things on there. So if you live in Rochester, I highly recommend reading that website because you may find something else
Oh,
about your family or maybe even your house.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's interesting for me. I if I'm going into a house, I'll be like, that's on the list.
Oh yeah.
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 There's a
Well,
lot of like so because spiritualism is such a big thing here in Rochester, where it's interesting because it's very much in plain sight, but almost if you don't know what you're looking for, you might not see it.
mhm.
And a lot of people historically have there've just been people who just do mediumship, like especially back in the day in the 20s and stuff like that. People would just do it. They're just like meet for seances
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time in their house. And so it's just funny because I've heard stories from some people I know who are involved in spiritualism where they were walking in an old neighborhood and they talked to like the owner of a house and they were like, that used to be a spiritualist church, right? And they were just like, no, I did not, but that makes a lot of
Right.
sense.
Oh,
Awesome.
interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing, just to throw out there, is my the spiritual society that I'm on the board of is the Rochester Spiritual Society,
Mhm.
and you can find that if you literally just it's rochesterspiritualsociety.org, and then we have all our links up for that too. And we do
Perfect.
all sorts of stuff. It's not just we have like a once a month Sunday service, which is more of like a churchy type thing. But we also have like classes and like tons of just like random fun social events and stuff for people who are interested in spirituals things, spooky things. We kind of just welcome everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so
Cool.
much.
No
Yeah.
problem.
I'm gonna check all those out.
Yeah.
Please do.
Everybody check those
It's
out,
really
man.
neat.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on. I feel like we
Yeah.
just like scratched the
We
surface of everything,
definitely.
and I have so many other questions.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, especially with the spiritualist stuff, and we can talk offline a little bit more about it because I
Yeah.
have another burning question, but we gotta go. So,
Okay.
so listeners, thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to That Sounds Terrifying. We would really, really appreciate that. Give us a 5-star rating, and if you don't think we're 5 stars, give us some feedback. What's our email address there, Nick?
Oh, that sounds terrifying at gmail.com. It's a very
That's right.
difficult one.
Yeah, so give us some feedback and let us know what we could do a little better. Um, and other than that, whether it be a Long Island iced tea, because that's Steven's favorite, or ghosts, keep your spirits up.